the storm didn't begin with thunder. It started with a whisper. On a warm Thursday morning in Washington, D.C., as the cherry blossoms bloomed outside the Capitol, the halls inside buzzed with an unusual tension. Something big was coming, and those in the know were already bracing for impact. The coffee carts were abuzz with rumors. Reporters clutched their phones tightly, eyeing their inboxes with the intensity of battlefield soldiers. At the epicenter of it all stood Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General under President Donald Trump's second term. Known for her sharp intellect, unshakable confidence, and courtroom brilliance, Bondi had spent the past few months quietly gathering evidence, building what she internally dubbed Operation Glass House. And the target? None other than Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. AOC, the fiery progressive voice from New York's 14th District, had long been a controversial figure. To her supporters, she was a champion of the people. To her critics, she was a radical idealist with questionable judgment. But until now, political sparring had remained verbal until Bondi uncovered something that changed everything. The origin of the legal firestorm was a leaked internal audit from a nonprofit organization tied to AOC's campaign. According to the anonymous source, whistleblower protected under a federal statute, the audit revealed potential misuse of campaign funds, foreign donations laundered through shell accounts, and inappropriate coordination with media entities to push misleading narratives in exchange for favorable legislation. When Bondi first received the document in a sealed manila envelope 3 months prior, she thought it was just another routine political smear. But the more she read, the deeper the rabbit hole went. Quietly, she assembled a task force of elite investigators, former federal prosecutors, and forensic accountants. Together, they followed the money trail. And what they found was explosive. By the time Bondi decided to make her first move, the evidence was already overwhelming. She wasn't just holding a deck of cards, she had a royal flush. In the West Wing, President Trump had been briefed on the progress regularly. He gave Bondi full authority to act independently, a rare show of hands-off leadership. Trump, who had often clashed with AOC publicly, trusted Bondi's legal instincts more than anyone. If there's corruption, he said during one late-night meeting, drag it into the light. Bondi, now poised to act, called for a press conference scheduled for the next day. Word got out quickly. By late evening, Pam Bondi and AOC were trending on X, formerly Twitter. Pundits scrambled to book guests. CNN called it a partisan stunt. Fox News called it the legal reckoning of the decade. Progressives accused Bondi of weaponizing the DOJ. Conservatives said it was about time someone held radicals accountable. But amidst the political noise, Pam Bondi remained calm. Her team worked through the night inside the Justice Department's upper-floor offices. Stacks of documents, flash drives, surveillance photos, and forensic reports were laid out like pieces of a complex puzzle. This wasn't a game. It was a legal storm in the making. As dawn broke over D.C., Bondi stood before the mirror in her office, adjusting the American flag pin on her blazer. She looked at her reflection, not with pride, but with purpose. "I didn't come here to make friends," she whispered to herself. "I came to uphold the law." With one final breath, she turned toward the door. The nation was about to witness a political earthquake, and at the center of it was a woman who had never lost a legal battle. The press room inside the Department of Justice hadn't seen this kind of energy since the Mueller report years ago. Cameramen rushed to their positions, news anchors whispered into their microphones, and phones buzzed with speculation. Reporters were expecting drama, but what they got was a bombshell. Pam Bondi stepped up to the podium, flanked by 2 towering U.S. Marshals and a thick black folder in her hand labeled, "Confidential, Case #AOC 147. "Good morning," Bondi began, her voice firm and unshaken. "This is not a political announcement. This is a legal one." The room fell silent. She continued, "After months of investigative review by a bipartisan task force, the Department of Justice has uncovered compelling evidence of financial misconduct, campaign finance violations, and abuse of congressional power tied to Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and associated entities." Gasps spread through the room. One reporter nearly dropped his pen. Bondi placed the folder on the podium and opened it slowly. Inside were pages of documents, bank transactions, wire transfer records, testimony transcripts, and surveillance photographs. As she turned to the large screen behind her, a presentation began to roll. First, Bondi pointed to the screen. We have identified over $1.3 million in campaign funds that were redirected through a chain of 4 nonprofits, each with overlapping boards, no active programs, and shared digital infrastructure. These funds were ultimately used for personal real estate renovations, luxury travel, and in one case, an international media by supporting legislation AOC publicly denied authoring. The screen flashed to photos of a lavish apartment renovation in Brooklyn, invoices paid from PAC-linked bank accounts, and flight records to Paris and Dubai. Second, she said, we have traced foreign donations, illegally funneled into her campaign, originating from 2 overseas entities tied to a Scandinavian environmental lobbying firm. These donations were split into microtransactions using third-party donor platforms to bypass FEC detection thresholds. Her voice didn't waver. Lastly, and perhaps most disturbingly, we have obtained communications between AOC's office and several media executives detailing a quid pro quo arrangement, favorable airtime and coverage in exchange for legislative promotion of tech sector regulations that benefited those media companies' rivals. That final revelation ignited the room. One reporter from MSNBC stood up. Are you saying there's enough here for criminal charges? Bondi answered without hesitation. Yes. The DOJ is preparing formal charges under Title 52 of the U.S. Code, relating to election law, and Title 18, concerning wire fraud and racketeering. We are also forwarding a criminal referral to the House Ethics Committee and the Federal Election Commission. News agencies lit up. Social media exploded. Within minutes, hashtags like #AOC indictment and #Bondi bombshell trended across every platform. As Bondi exited the podium, reporters shouted follow-up questions. Is AOC under arrest? Will there be a public hearing? Is the White House involved? She paused at the door and turned. This is not about left or right. It's about right and wrong. No one, no matter how popular or powerful, is above the law. Meanwhile, in a sleek Manhattan apartment, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stood in front of her television, frozen. Her phone rang nonstop. Her legal team, her chief of staff, members of the squad, and even donors demanding answers. She finally picked up a call from her lead attorney. We need to talk, the voice said sharply. They're not bluffing. They've got the receipts. OC's expression turned cold. I won't go down without a fight, she said. They want a war? They just got one. But even as she said it, she knew deep down, this wasn't just political theater. This was serious. Pam Bondi wasn't someone who made idle threats. She had a reputation for striking only when her case was airtight. And from the looks of it, this one was. As the legal avalanche gained momentum, Washington, D.C. descended into chaos. Every television network ran nonstop coverage. News tickers screamed, AOC under federal investigation, while political analysts debated the fallout. In the heart of Capitol Hill, Democratic leadership scrambled to contain the crisis. Speaker Hakeem Jeffries convened an emergency closed-door meeting with party strategists and key allies. The atmosphere was tense, grim, even. AOC wasn't just a backbench representative. She was a star, a fundraising machine, a media icon, and a voice for the party's progressive wing. And now she was a legal liability. Do we cut her loose? One senior Democrat whispered. We can't afford to lose the base, another snapped. But if this goes to indictment, the political balancing act was already beginning to crack. Meanwhile, outside the Capitol, protests formed, some in defense of AOC, others demanding accountability. Signs read, Stop the witch hunt, while others screamed, No one is above the law. Back inside the Justice Department, Pam Bondi doubled down. She announced that a federal grand jury had been impaneled. Subpoenas were being issued. Multiple individuals tied to AOC's political apparatus had already been questioned under oath. Her legal team operated with military precision. Bondi personally oversaw each affidavit, cross-examined the most sensitive witnesses, and even traveled to New York City to quietly meet with 2 former staffers who had turned whistleblowers. One, a former financial coordinator for AOC's campaign, confessed in a sworn deposition. There were times we were told to code expenses under voter outreach when in reality it was for her personal home upgrades or to reimburse allies for things unrelated to the campaign. Bondi's face remained unreadable during the testimony, but she knew this was the smoking gun. With every passing day, more evidence piled up: email chains, encrypted messaging screenshots, shadow accounting spreadsheets. The DOJ now had an airtight case for at least 3 felony charges: campaign finance fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. President Trump, back at the White House, was briefed every morning by Bondi and National Security Advisor Kash Patel. While Trump publicly stayed out of the matter, careful not to make it look like a vendetta, he privately praised Bondi's discipline. "She's going by the book," he told staff. "That's how you win. Not with tweets, not with rallies, with facts. Hard legal facts." The nation, however, was deeply divided. On MSNBC, commentators warned of banana republic tactics. On Fox, Tucker Carlson's replacement described it as the most important legal moment of our generation. Amid the firestorm, AOC took to social media. Standing in front of a bookshelf in her apartment, she live-streamed for nearly an hour, claiming innocence. "This is not justice, it's vengeance. They're afraid of what I represent. I have done nothing illegal, and I will fight this every step of the way." Her supporters cheered online, but the comments section wasn't all friendly. Many viewers bombarded her with questions about the emails, the money trail, the luxury travel. And then, a new voice entered the scene. Pam Bondi released an unedited 11-minute video, calmly walking viewers through the key pieces of evidence, complete with scanned receipts, sworn statements, and legal citations. "This isn't political," she said. "It's prosecutorial. These facts were not created by me, they were revealed by her behavior." The video went viral. Even moderate Democrats began to whisper their concerns. And in a dramatic development, one of AOC's closest political allies, Representative Ayanna Pressley, released a statement that shocked everyone. "If these allegations are true, I cannot and will not defend wrongdoing, no matter who it involves." The political earthquake had begun cracking the very foundation of the progressive wing. Back at the DOJ, Bondi signed the final charging document. It would be filed in federal court within the next 48 hours. She placed the pen down, looked up at her team, and said, "Let's go make history." The sun rose over Washington, D.C. with an eerie stillness, as if the city knew something historic was about to happen. Across the nation, eyes were glued to TV screens and mobile feeds. Cable networks ran countdown clocks. Drone cameras hovered over the U.S. District Courthouse in D.C. The DOJ, tightly sealed with increased security, was a hive of silent movement. Pam Bondi, already inside, reviewed the final language of the indictment. She wasn't nervous, just deliberate. This moment wasn't a celebration. It was accountability. Her job wasn't to ruin a career. It was to enforce the rule of law. At precisely 10 a.m., Bondi stepped out of her office, flanked by 2 top federal prosecutors. With stoic resolve, she carried a sealed black briefcase. Inside, a 74-page indictment, complete with 3 felony counts and over a dozen supporting charges. Across town, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat inside her attorney's office. Her face was pale. The documents delivered earlier that morning weren't rumors or hypotheticals anymore, they were the real thing. Her legal team flipped through the charges in silence. Each page seemed heavier than the last. Count 1, campaign finance fraud. Count 2, wire fraud and misuse of federal funds. Count 3, conspiracy to launder campaign contributions via nonprofit entities. Supporting charges, false statements, tampering with records, and obstruction of justice. If convicted on all counts, AOC faced up to 35 years in federal prison. Her lead counsel, Alan Grayson, spoke first. "You need to prepare for arraignment. They're coming." "But I didn't do this," AOC whispered, her voice cracking. "That's irrelevant now," he replied. "It's no longer about perception. It's about facts and courtrooms." By midday, Bondi's team made the official filing. Within minutes, the indictment became public. The document hit the press like a meteor. Twitter/X servers lagged from the traffic surge. News anchors fumbled over legal terms as headlines screamed. Breaking, AC officially indicted by DOJ. Bombshell charges filed by Pam Bondi. Historic, first federal indictment of a progressive squad. MEMBR at 2:15 p.m. U.S. Marshals arrived at Ocasio-Cortez location in Lower Manhattan. She didn't resist. She didn't cry. But as she stepped into the black SUV in handcuffs carefully concealed from cameras, she knew her political life would never be the same. Pam Bondi stood in her DOJ office as the arrest was confirmed. "She's in custody," a deputy told her quietly. Bondi nodded, emotionless. "Next step is arraignment. Federal court, D.C., tomorrow." The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt issued a calm but powerful statement that afternoon. President Trump has been fully briefed and is confident that Attorney General Bondi's actions reflect the highest standards of legal ethics. We do not interfere in DOJ matters. We simply uphold law and order. Outside the DOJ building, reporters swarmed for answers, but Bondi refused interviews. She let the paperwork and the law speak for itself. Still, not everyone was silent. Protests erupted coast to coast. In Times Square, supporters of AOC held up signs, "Fight the Power" and "Bondi equals political hitwoman." In Miami, Trump supporters rallied, chanting, "Lock her up," in echoes of campaigns past. In courtrooms, however, chants didn't matter. That evening, Bondi met privately with top officials from the FEC and House Oversight. She was briefed on a related investigation now expanding to include 2 other members of the squad and a political action committee that had been funneling unregistered foreign donations. It wasn't over. It was just the beginning. The courtroom was packed. Flanked by U.S. Marshals and her legal team, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez entered the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. to face the American justice system, this time not as a legislator, but as a defendant. Pam Bondi stood on the opposite side of the room, calm, poised, and quietly reviewing her case notes. Her team included top prosecutors and forensic financial analysts. The media had dubbed the trial the case of the century. And for once, the hype wasn't exaggerated. Judge Raymond Hargrave, known for his stern demeanor and strict adherence to constitutional law, presided over the case. The moment he took his seat, silence swept the room. United States of America versus Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Charges of federal campaign finance fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to launder funds. Court is now in session. AOC's defense team began with a fiery motion to dismiss, calling the case politically motivated. But Bondi responded with cold, meticulous precision. "Your Honor, politics has no place here," she said. "Only evidence does." And then the floodgates opened. Bondi presented her case in layers like a seasoned surgeon performing a high-stakes operation. She brought in a forensic accountant who traced hundreds of thousands in misappropriated donations, 2 whistleblowers from AOC's own staff who confirmed orders to reclassify personal expenses, and a tech expert who decrypted encrypted group chats revealing direct conversations about misusing campaign funds. Exhibit after exhibit, testimony after testimony. Bondi didn't just build a case, she built a narrative so tight, so damning that even skeptical viewers were left stunned. The most shocking moment came on the 3rd day of the trial when Bondi introduced a video. "She's in custody," a deputy told her quietly. Bondi nodded, emotionless. "Next step is arraignment. Federal Court, D.C., tomorrow." The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt issued a calm but powerful statement that afternoon. President Trump has been fully briefed and is confident that Attorney General Bondi's actions reflect the highest standards of legal ethics. We do not interfere in DOJ matters. We simply uphold law and order. Outside the DOJ building, reporters swarmed for answers, but Bondi refused interviews. She let the paperwork and the law speak for itself. Still, not everyone was silent. Protests erupted coast to coast. In Times Square, supporters of AOC held up signs, "Fight the Power" and "Bondi equals political hitwoman." In Miami, Trump supporters rallied, chanting, "Lock her up," in echoes of campaigns past. In courtrooms, however, chants didn't matter. That evening, Bondi met privately with top officials from the FEC and House Oversight. She was briefed on a related investigation now expanding to include 2 other members of the squad and a political action committee that had been funneling unregistered foreign donations. It wasn't over. It was just the beginning. The courtroom was packed. Flanked by U.S. Marshals and her legal team, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez entered the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. to face the American justice system, this time not as a legislator, but as a defendant. Pam Bondi stood on the opposite side of the room, calm, poised, and quietly reviewing her case notes. Her team included top prosecutors and forensic financial analysts. The media had dubbed the trial the case of the century. And for once, the hype wasn't exaggerated. Judge Raymond Hargrave, known for his stern demeanor and strict adherence to constitutional law, presided over the case. The moment he took his seat, silence swept the room. United States of America versus Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Charges of federal campaign finance fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to launder funds. Court is now in session. AOC's defense team began with a fiery motion to dismiss, calling the case politically motivated. But Bondi responded with cold, meticulous precision. "Your Honor, politics has no place here," she said. "Only evidence does." And then the floodgates opened. Bondi presented her case in layers like a seasoned surgeon performing a high-stakes operation. She brought in a forensic accountant who traced hundreds of thousands in misappropriated donations, 2 whistleblowers from AOC's own staff who confirmed orders to reclassify personal expenses, and a tech expert who decrypted encrypted group chats revealing direct conversations about misusing campaign funds. Exhibit after exhibit, testimony after testimony. Bondi didn't just build a case, she built a narrative so tight, so damning that even skeptical viewers were left stunned. The most shocking moment came on the 3rd day of the trial when Bondi introduced a video deposition of a foreign donor linked to a Scandinavian environmental lobbying group. Speaking through a translator, the donor confessed, "Yes, we knew U.S. law barred our contributions, but we were assured by her team it would be hidden through non-profit intermediaries." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The defense team's confidence visibly cracked. Even Judge Hargrave seemed taken aback. "This is not standard campaign mismanagement," he said from the bench. "This is systemic abuse of federal election law." By the end of the trial's 2nd week, Bondi rested her case. The defense, scrambling, tried to paint AOC as a victim of ambitious staffers who went rogue. But under cross-examination, their key witnesses crumbled. One even admitted that Ocasio-Cortez herself had signed off on wire transfers without asking questions. Closing arguments sealed it. Pam Bondi stood before the jury. She built a public persona based on principles. But behind closed doors, it was about power, money, and control. This isn't a political persecution. This is about someone who broke the very laws she was sworn to uphold. Hold her accountable not because she's a Democrat or a progressive, but because she's a citizen who violated the law. The jury deliberated for 17 hours. When they returned, the nation held its breath. The foreperson rose. On count 1, campaign finance fraud, guilty. On count 2, wire fraud, guilty. On count 3, conspiracy to commit money laundering, guilty. Gasps filled the room. AOC's head dropped into her hands. Tears welled in her eyes. Her once rising political career had been reduced to rubble in one thunderous legal hammer strike. Judge Hargrave scheduled sentencing for 60 days later. The maximum potential penalty, 35 years in federal prison. Though legal experts expected less, the conviction was irreversible. AOC was immediately removed from all congressional committees and placed under house arrest with GPS monitoring. Outside, the crowd had doubled. Protesters screamed. Supporters wept. Trump loyalists cheered. America was watching and America was divided. Pam Bondi didn't gloat. She didn't celebrate. As she exited the courthouse, flanked by a wall of flashing cameras and microphones, she simply said, "This is not a victory. This is a reminder that our republic is built on the rule of law. And when that law is broken, we will respond. Fairly, firmly, and without fear." The impact was seismic. Congress launched multiple new audits into PACs and nonprofit groups across both parties. The Federal Election Commission unveiled a bipartisan reform proposal. Bondi's approval rating skyrocketed, and President Trump called her the most fearless attorney general in American history. As for AOC, she went silent. No interviews. No tweets. Just the echo of her downfall reverberating through the halls of power she once walked so boldly. And behind it all was Pam Bondi, relentless, sharp, and unwavering in her pursuit of justice.